Hello, welcome back to my channel. We're gonna try to do the microphone today. I have tested it on both my phone and my laptop and it seemed to work. I still have to talk kind of loud, and I don't really talk loud. Like, I can't yell at all. Don't try to kidnap me. Um, so I thought if I could talk like in my normal voice with the microphone, it would amplify it as a microphone does. But no, I still have to talk kind of loud for it to sound even louder. Anyway, I already bought them and I like how they look. So we're gonna use them. Um Today we're gonna talk about books. Finally. I Every time I know I've only uploaded like 3 videos, but every time I share them on my Bookstagram, I'm like, this is a video about movies and you are a book account. And I know my YouTube can be anything I want it to be, but I do love books. I love books more than I love movies. So I want to prove that to you today. Um I didn't wear this shirt on purpose for that. It just worked out. Um anyway, since it's March, we're going to talk about books written by women. My favorite books written by women. These are obviously not all of them. These are just the ones that I pulled from my shelf over there. But then I also have that. I didn't look at that. I have that little thing down there. I did not look at that. And then my favorite books of all time, I have them tucked away. And I was too lazy to get them out. So I'm going to mention 2 of those, but you're not going to see them because I was too lazy to get them out. So I'll start with those so we can get those out of the way. The first one is the collected works of Audre Lorde. If you know me, you know I love Audre Lorde. The collected works specifically, I'm very grateful I started off with that was like my introduction to Audre Lorde, because it does such a great job of putting in a mix of her work, and you can really see, I think, obviously I never knew her personally, but I feel like you can see very deeply who she was, because it has essays, it has interviews, it has um, information about the work she did with various women and her poetry. Uh, Audre Lorde was someone who, I don't like using the phrase hardworking as like a complimentary thing, but I think Audre Lorde is someone who did a lot of work, and that work was very genuinely motivated in amplifying the voices of women and amplifying her own voice, which I think is just as important. Um, I think she's someone who, while going through unimaginable circumstances that must have been unimaginably painful and heavy on her mental health as well as her physical body, she managed to still view life in such a beautiful way and view womanhood as this beautiful creation, which it is. So I could sit here and talk about it and I will cry. But Audre Lorde is a writer who really, really changed my life, and I'm always going to be grateful that I can even experience her writing. Um, Second one, I do have like 6 of her other books back here, but this one specifically I want to recommend for this month, and it's the one I always recommend, Communion by Bell Hooks. I, like many of you, started my Bell Hooks journey with All About Love. I I used to see that book at Target, and I thought it was like one of those lame, like, you can't find love because you leave people on red books, like Attached. I hated that book. I think I threw that book in the trash. I think that's one of the only books I've thrown. Once I Was You in the trash. um I'll Be Gone in the Night, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, whatever that book is called, and Attached. I think those are, and for I think Once I Was You and I'll Be Gone in the Dark, I like chucked those books in the trash, I remember. But that's neither here nor there. Um anyway, Communion. Oh, so All About Love. I then saw someone on Instagram talk about it, and it sounded much more different than what I thought it was. So I picked it up. And while I do like it, while I do recommend it, I didn't wholeheartedly agree with it. And that's okay. That doesn't mean Bell Hooks was wrong. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. We all experience life differently. And it's one of those books where I think having slightly differing opinions isn't groundbreaking. Um, but I was still very intrigued by her writing. So then I went to the Los Angeles Book Festival, and that's where I bought like 6 of her other books. And one of them was Communion. And Communion I love. If you're interested, if you go on my Bookstagram, there's a video of me reading the first 2 pages of Communion, um, which are still, like, that alone is still some of my favorite writing to this day. And I just love the way that Communion talks more about female friendship and how us as women, we often subconsciously or consciously prioritize finding romantic relationships with men versus we prioritize finding romantic relationships with men while simultaneously the most affection, the most care we get comes from our girlfriends. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but I think for the most part this is something that can be very true. Um, but I also think this is why navigating friendship breakups like with your female friends is equally as devastating, if not more, than a breaking up in a romantic relationship. Which I have not yet experienced, so I might know nothing. um, but yeah, Communion by Bell Hooks I think fits this month perfectly. Okay, now I'm gonna show you the ones I have here. I lent my mom the first book of this saga, so I don't have it with me, but I have the second one. Elena Ferrante. She was like the number one book for the New York Times, like 100 best books of the 21st century or whatever that was called. Um, and I normally wouldn't take that list seriously, but because I had some of my other favorites like Jasmine Ward and Fernanda Melchor on it, I was like, okay, I can fuck with this a little bit. So then I decided to read it. And so basically, if you don't know, the first one is called My Brilliant Friend. In Spanish, it's La Amiga Estupenda. And it's 4 books that are supposed to be one whole book, um, that roughly come up to, I think, 1,400 or 1,500 pages altogether. And it's about the lives of 2 girls living in Naples, and it starts with them as children in grade school all the way to them as women well into their 50s, 60s, by the very end. And I think this book, I used this book for my library position interview, when I had to recommend something, and I'll tell you guys the same thing. When I think of these books, I think they're so perfect because I think as women, you can read them at any age and find something to relate to. I think if I had read these when I was a little girl, I would have still formed an attachment to them. Um, because, like, when they're little girls, I see so much of Lila in me. And then as I grow older, I relate more to Lenu. Uh, but so reading this at 28, I related a lot to them in their 20s when they're in relationships and starting to have children and starting to find their voices and write. I relate a lot to that, and I want to reread them when I'm older and see if I relate to the parts where they're older, where they're like in their late 30s, 40s, because I feel like if, as a woman at any stage of your life, you will find something to relate to in these books. I also think Elena Ferrante just has a very unique voice. She has a very unique way of writing. Obviously, I did not read these in Italian, but I read them in Spanish because I wanted, I think on TikTok, I saw someone suggest reading them in just any other romantic language because that would be far better than reading them in English. And I agree because I read the first one in English and then I read the other three in Spanish, and my experience was really elevated. I just think there's words that don't exist in English and ways to form sentences. I don't know if that makes sense. That don't exist in English, but that do in romantic languages. Um, so I think it was a lot more satisfying reading it that way. But yeah, I think even if you read it, my two friends that I read it with, they read it in English and they also loved it. So I think that's more of just like a niche thing. Next, A Great and Terrible Beauty. I don't know how. I always call her Liba Bray. I know that's probably not how you say it, but Liba. That also sounds stupid. Miss Bray. Um, this is a trilogy. About two. This is a trilogy about this girl who starts going to like a boarding school, and she, because her mom died and her dad is like sick, out of it, terrible parent, her brother sucks, doesn't want to take care of her, so they send her to this school where she can learn how to be a lady so she can get married to someone rich and stop being their fucking problem. um and there she meets a group of girls. Well, she meets a girl that she befriends, and then two other girls who are friends, and they all become friends. um because they discover that they can do magic. um and this book, I'm not huge into like going out of my way to read fantasy, but this book is so good. This trilogy is so good. Um, I think there's like enough reality mixed with fantasy to make it a very palpable book. Um, I don't know what else to say without giving things away. I think the base plot of them being girls going to this boarding school, because people want to marry them off because their family doesn't want them, um, and they're all like wealthy, like they're just going there to be sold off to men basically. Um, but it's a very girl power book. Like, I don't have to get married to anyone I don't want to. I can do magic. I'm way more important than just being somebody's bride. Those vibes. Um, but I think it's developed really, really well throughout the three books, and the character development of each individual girl is really fascinating, and the love story is so heartbreaking. It haunts me to this day. Anyway, you knew it was going to be on here. You knew that it was going to be on here. Um, this is still my copy from sixth grade. That's where I wrote in sixth grade, like my classroom, my phone number, my address, because it really scared me to lose this. That's how precious this is to me. I have to sniff it. Wait, I'm so sorry. I love the way the Twilight books smell. The nostalgia. Anyway, if you don't know, this book is about a girl named Bella who is born in Forks, Washington. And then when her dad's parents are both sick and like have dementia, so he has to take care of them full time, her mom is like, I don't like that you have to take care of your parents and can't baby me anymore, so I'm taking our daughter and I'm leaving because her mom sucks. um and then her mom moves to Phoenix, Arizona, of all places, and takes her with her. And then as Bella grows up, she's like, I love the heat and I hate the cold. Therefore, I will not visit my father, who couldn't choose me because he had to take care of his parents, who were both suffering from dementia. And then her mom meets Phil, and Phil is a baseball player, but I don't think like a professional baseball player. That doesn't seem right. Um, let's call him a semi professional baseball player. So she has to move with him to Florida. We're just getting more and more Republican. Um, and she's like, oh, but they also have to travel a lot. Aside from moving, they're gonna have to travel a lot. And she's like, Bella, I'm not gonna be home to take care of you, even though I've never taken care of you a day in your life. What are we gonna do? So then Bella's like, it's okay. I want to go live with my dad, and that's a lie. And everybody knows it's a lie, but her mom's like, I don't like my daughter, so I don't really care what she does. So then Bella moves to Forks with her dad, who's the sheriff of Forks, Washington. When I went to Forks, Washington, I didn't see a cop a single time. Not a cop car, not a cop, nothing. They have like the fake one that's supposed to belong to Charlie. I'm like, do you guys not do crime? Because this is like 100 square miles. I don't know. Um. Anyway, and then she goes to school and she meets Edward Cullen, and Edward Cullen is a vampire, but not like a Nosferatu vampire. He's a cool new vampire, well, new for 2008 vampire, who sparkles in the sun and is vegetarian, which means he only sucks the blood of animals, not of humans. Um, and then they fall in love because no one else loves Bella. So why wouldn't she fall in love with the first person who shows genuine interest in her after being completely repulsed by her? But he's only repulsed by her for like a day. And then he goes to eat and he comes back and he's like, girl, I'm good. It's just that you smelled really fucking good and that threw me off. And then they fall in love. If you've already read it, I think you should reread it. I love it. Okay. On a more serious note, back again. Sula by Toni Morrison. This book is about, it's kind of the same as Elena Ferrante's novel. It's about two girls who are friends and they grow. Girl, I have to sneeze. I have to pause this again. We're back. Forgive me. Maybe I'll have to sneeze in every video I record. Sula is similar to Elena Ferrante in that it follows two young girls who are friends, Sula and Nell. But they both take very different paths in life. They make different decisions. And Nell is very welcomed in the community. She makes quote unquote like all the right choices, so people view her like a peer. And uh Sula's just, she knows what she wants. She's got drive. Um and she doesn't want her life to be dictated in like this very black and white thing. Um so she's kind of an outcast in their community, and then Sula does something that is pretty much unforgivable, um, in terms of her friendship with Nell, and that changes everything for them. But I just think, God, why do I always want to cry? I'm a fucking water sign. Um, I have never read a character written the way that Sula is written, and I think often as women, I especially feel this in my own life, um, when you aren't like the perfect daughter the way your parents want you to be, the perfect sister the way your siblings want you to be, the perfect girlfriend the way your boyfriend wants you to be, etc., etc., the perfect worker the way your boss wants you to be, or whatever. um you're deemed as like this horrible person. And so to see Sula be so painstakingly human, and for Toni Morrison to not rip her apart for that, that I think is so brilliant. I think if Sula had been written by a man, then maybe it would have progressed differently. I think it takes a woman to be forgiving of another woman's humanity, because we understand each other far better and far more intimately. Read it. Woman Hollering Creek and Other Stories by Sandra Cisneros. I think this is the one that has the like poem where she's like, today I am 11, but I've always been 11 and I'll always be 11. That poem makes me cry. Again, similar to Toni Morrison, I think Sandra Cisneros is someone who can write. I haven't read that much of her writing, but from what I have read, I think she's someone who can write women being unequivocally themselves, and she does not punish them for it, uh, which is very important to me. Mikki Kendall, I'm blocking her name. Mikki Kendall. This book is so annotated and loved by me. Mikki Kendall is someone I discovered on Twitter, I believe. Sorry, I don't want to mention Elon Musk's platform. I'm no longer on there, but I think I discovered her on Twitter um, before this book came out, and everything she would post, I was like, yes, yes, yes. Um, and then this book came out, and there might be other writing like this, but this book has a very specific chapter, and I'm sure if I took the time I could find it, because I know for a fact I have it highlighted, um, where she, because it's about intersectional feminism and taking account of race and other things like poverty into your idea of feminism, which is what feminism should genuinely be. Um, and there's a part in it where she talks about how, as a black woman, she is often, not often, but sometimes by other women, asked to view black men as more powerful than white women, which is not true. Um, and that was kind of the first time I had ever heard someone talk about that, because that's something I think about in my own life, where I'm like, well, I don't think the men in my life with their um darker skin shade, their broken accents, are have more privileges than white women. I don't think they do. And that was the first time I had ever had someone say that back to me. And for it to be Mikki Kendall, who I already deeply respected and largely agreed with, was huge for me. I think this book has, I think if I was going into feminism, if I was studying feminism, if I was starting out with feminism, this is the first book I would read, and it's the first book I would recommend. Um, so yeah. The Hunger Games by Ms. Suzanne Collins. I want to say this. I want to take this opportunity to say this. Um, I have never read or seen The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because why I don't want to, and why I quote unquote dislike it is because I'm not interested in hearing about President Snow. I'm not. It's like, to me, it's like if someone wrote a book about current events and like Luigi and United Healthcare, and then said, to accompany this book, you can read Donald Trump's biography. You would kind of be like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. And that's my thing. And Lucy, she means nothing to me because she's just like accompanying Snow's story. That being said, that is not me saying the book is bad. That is not me saying the movie is bad, because I can't say that. Um, but I just think, like, I'm really excited for the Haymitch book, but I just think making a book about President Snow feels so counterintuitive to what the Hunger Games is. Anyway, that's my little rant. The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. I read these books in middle school. I read them with a friend who ended up becoming like a white supremacist. She's not white, but she ended up becoming like a white supremacist, which is crazy to me. Anyway, the books, if you don't know, are about America, the United States, in like a very far future that might not be so far, a very distant future where there was an alluded to war and then a main war that ended up destroying, like a nuclear war that ended up destroying the country. And so now, instead of states and stuff, there are districts. There are 12 districts and a capital. And each year, there is something called the Hunger Games, which is hosted by the capital. And the capital obviously is like all the rich people, where they take two tributes. They take two tributes. I'm so sorry. They take two tributes, a girl and a boy, from each district, and they put them in an arena, lock them up, and they have to battle to the death. And these kids are like from 12 to 18, I think. And they have to battle to the death. And whoever is the last one to not die wins, and then gets to live like a pretty cool life of luxury. And that's, I guess, to keep people at bay, to keep population control, all those fun things that governments do. And so the Hunger Games follows our girl Katniss Everdeen, who personally I think is alluded to being an indigenous girl in the books. I know other people agree with that, but apparently she's a white girl. It would make more sense for her to be indigenous with the hunting and the knowledge of the land. But anyway, and also just for the story, for it to be like an indigenous girl who takes the country back. But anyway, she's a white girl. She's Jennifer Lawrence. And her sister, her name gets called out. Her sister name is Prim. Fuck ass name. But her sister's name gets called, and then Katniss is like, no, I volunteered as tribute, in this very moving way, because no one has ever volunteered as tribute. No one's like, hey, no, why don't you kill me instead? And she's malnourished, like she doesn't have a lot going for her in terms of her even thinking she's gonna win. She thinks she's gonna lose, and then she has a heart, so she's paired up with Peeta, who's the baker's son, so that's why his name is Peeta. And she's like, he is cool, so I don't know if I can kill him, because one time he helped me out, so I don't know if I can kill him when we're in the arena. So she's going in there, she's like, I'm gonna die. But then Miss Katniss instead starts a revolution against the Capitol. And that's what the other two books are about, Catching Fire and Mockingjay. These books are so well written in the details. Suzanne Collins is such a freaking mastermind. And it's kind of like with Octavia Butler, where it's something that was written so long ago. Obviously, Parable of the Sower was written way before the Hunger Games, but it's something that was written so long ago that you're kind of like, oh, nothing changes. People have always had these exact same fears. Governments have always been the exact same. For example, like when I have these conversations with my dad a lot where he's like, why doesn't the government do this? Why doesn't the government help this? And I'm like, because the government is always going to profit from people dying. Even right now, as we live, our government profits from us civilians um, being homeless, being on the street, dying. Um, that is why our healthcare system is the way it is. That is why so many different aspects of our civilization function the way that they do, because the government benefits from our downfalls. And it's the same in the Hunger Games, it's not that far fetched when you look at our people in charge that someday they'd be like, we just have to look like my friend Steph said, look at the Mr. Beast games. The Squid Games and how they wanted to do that in real life. I know Squid Game has like a whole other history though, where I think it did exist and then was that inspired the show, but that's a whole other thing, whole other country that I don't really know about. Anyway, the Hunger Games very realistic. I don't like the movies. That's just my personal thing. Again, I'm not saying A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is bad, and I'm not saying the movies are bad. I'm saying I don't personally like them, and I'm just one person. But the books I 100% recommend, and they're written for middle schoolers, so they're really easy to get through. Next, continuing this seriousness, Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. I think in Spanish it's just Temporada de Huracanes. Let me read this to you. I'm just gonna read the back to you guys because I love the description of this book. I posted so much that I posted a video. It's no longer there on my Instagram once of me like reading the back of this because I love it. The witch is dead, and the discovery of her corpse has the whole village investigating the murder. As the novel unfolds in a dazzling linguistic torrent, with each unreliable narrator lingering on new details, Melchor extracts some tiny shred of humanity from these characters and creates a swirling portrait of a damned Mexican village. Like Roberto Bolaños' 2666 or Faulkner's novels, Hurricane Season takes place in a world saturated with myths and violence, real violence, the kind that seeps into the soil, poisoning everything around it. A world that becomes more and more terrifying the deeper you explore it. This book made me cry. Also, Fernanda Melchor, she writes. If you've ever read Cormac McCarthy, if my friend Andy's watching this, he just rolled his eyes because he hates Cormac McCarthy. But if you've ever read Cormac McCarthy, she writes kind of the same, where it's just constant. Like she does not stop. Roberto Bolaño in The Savage Detectives kind of did the same, but not really. I like this style of writing because my eyes will just read until there's a period. So if I start at the beginning of a chapter and then I don't stop until the end of a chapter, I feel like I'm reading faster. So I fuck with it. And it helps with the subject of the book because it's very heavy and you're constantly learning, and so many like grotesque, shocking things happen in it. That you're reading, and then something will happen and you have to pause and be like, where did this come from? I'm uncomfortable. What is happening right now? I recommend it. I also, if you're more sensitive or if there's just some specific things you can't read about, I would look up if there's trigger warnings for this book specifically. But otherwise, delve right in. It's a good fucking book. Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. I don't know anything about Jenny Slate's life. I know she's in those whole like it ends with his controversies. I don't care about that. I don't know anything about that. I know she also has a new book that people didn't really like. I didn't read that. So we're speaking specifically about this. It's just like essays about her life, about her thoughts. But I really, really love it. I found myself relating to a lot of it, and just kind of um a lot of it is her basically saying that she wants, hold on, let me read this to you. So it says, please come close enough so that I can see you, and then I will try to do the rest for both of us, because I have not learned my lesson yet and do not possess the faith to believe in the partner who does his side of the thing. And then I wrote, it is hard to know how to love without wanting to completely shift myself so that I will be more digestible, so that someone will want to swallow me whole. So that's kind of the theme of this book, is talking about how she talks very honestly about how she wants to fall in love and she wants someone to love her. And I think that is a very taboo subject, and something, again, that we as women, and Bell Hooks talks about this too in Communion, that we as women are taught to kind of, that it's embarrassing for us to say, I want to be loved, I want you to love me, I want you to look at me, and not want to turn away. It can be an embarrassing thing to admit, it can be a scary thing to admit. So Jenny Slate in Little Weirds, that's what the whole book is about, is her bearing her soul and saying, I, like, it has that one quote where she's like, I want to be in the kitchen with you, I want to be in the kitchen cooking with you, and know that, like, you're going to wrap your arms around me, like, that we're in this together. And I really relate to everything in that book, and I think it's very raw, I think it's very real. Last but not least, we're going a little nostalgic here, if Twilight wasn't nostalgic enough. Kaya, the American Girl. And I also have, I just thrifted this one. This is a box set. I love Kaya. That's my girl. The Josefina. Welcome to Josefina's world. And this just talks about more specific, like, historical stuff in Josefina's life. This is, if you have never read American Girls. Kaya's obviously an indigenous girl, and it's just like her adventures and with her family and where she gets love. And obviously they're meant for kids, but I had to include them on here because I think they're so lovely and they're so nostalgic. And if we're gonna talk about women, we have to talk about girls. I was a girl once. I'm not anymore. I wholeheartedly object to that movement of being 28 and calling yourself a girl. I'm not. um, but we should protect girls who are actually still young girls. So I think if you have younger girls in your life, suggesting these books to them is really lovely. My niece is not at that age yet, I don't think, and she's kind of freaked out by dolls. So I don't think I'm ever going to get her the dolls, but I do want to eventually get her on board with reading the books. So that's kind of my last little nostalgic suggestion. But going back on that a little bit, I think it is, if we're talking about, like, it's March and it's Women's Month, etc., it is absolutely our job as adult women who have experienced more and who know more to be there and take care of the younger girls in our lives. And I think we owe it to them to be these people that they can look up to, but that they know they can go to fearlessly, where they won't be reprimanded, where they will be heard, and where they feel safe. I think at least about God, I want to cry again. I think at least about my own girlhood. Um, and there were very limited spaces where I felt safe. And I think that's our job as adult women, which is what we are. We're not girls. We're not just girls. We are not. We can be adult women who still love Twilight. We can be adult women who want to watch the movie Sleepover. That's okay. But we owe it to the girls who are actually still girls in our lives to take care of them and to look out for them. Because we know far better than anyone that this world is very scary and this world can be very cruel when you are a young girl. And especially a young girl, because young girls are targeted far more than adult women. I used to get catcalled. I used to have men pull up in their cars far more when I was 9, 10, 11 years old than I do now. So I think, obviously, you don't have to listen to me. I think that whole movement is not the progressive thing people think it is. And I think we need to focus more on the reality of things, and that we can have these things to decompress to. I don't want to do my job today, so I don't want to think about math, whatever. But at the end of the day, own the fact that you are an adult, that you are an adult woman, and you can use that in such a powerful way to take care of the younger girls in your life. Whatever that may look like, if it's your coworkers, if it's your direct family, if it's your neighbors, strangers. I've stepped in for literal strangers, like young girls I didn't know. Yeah, that's my takeaway from this Women's Month. Um, Obviously, read more stuff by women, watch more stuff by women, um, and create stuff, create shit, put shit out there. If you are a woman and you are watching this, put it out there. The world needs it, even if you don't think so. They do. Okay, that's the end of my rant. Thank you for watching. I'm still trying to be better about looking at the camera and not at myself. Okay. Now, I'm going to make a very scary phone call that I've been putting off. So that's why I made this video. Bye.